morning, everyone. Thank you so much coming to this event in Insta-Hiring. It's first edition of the Insta-Hiring Conclave in Singapore, and we're so glad to have a full house at 9 a.m. in the morning. This would have been a little difficult in India, but this is very, very positive, right? To just introduce myself, my name is Shashir Shetty. I'm a part of the sales team at Talvi. I oversee sales in India and Southeast Asia and Dubai as well. So basically, the APAC market I've just joined recently, about 3 months back. I was working with peers in India before I joined Talvi, and this is Singapore is a part of my new assignments. I'm very excited to be a part of the community here. Thank you. Uh, just to give you a very Insta-Hiring Conclave is something that we do across multiple cities. This is the sixth edition of the Insta-Hiring Conclave. We started off with San Francisco and Dallas. That's where our CEO and founder Sanjo is based out of. Then Mumbai, Delhi, Hyderabad, and Singapore is the latest edition as part of this Insta-Hiring Conclave. And I think we're very, very excited to be a part of this. So, just to give you a very, very quick background about Insta-Hiring and what is it that we try to drive through this. At Talvi, we've realized two things. One, the HR tech space itself is a very, very fragmented space, and I think there are a lot of players. It's a very crowded space. So the objective at Talview is, while we continue to do business as usual, it's also important to kind of empower the HR fraternity and the talent acquisition fraternity with information that allows them to make decisions that are relevant to the organization and gives them a lot of insights. So with this in mind, we started two properties. The first property being an online community called Trailblazers. So what we do as a part of this community, it's basically a learning community for the talent acquisition professionals, where we run masterclasses every month. So the last two masterclasses were on how AI is being used in in the CV screening and passing space, how it helps you kind of use intelligence to make better shortlisting decisions. We also did a webinar on how to use remote proctored cognitive intelligence solutions to run your entire recruitment process remotely without having to call the candidates in person. The next webinar will be on remote interviews and how do you use artificial intelligence in the space of remote interviews. This is an online community and it's open to everyone across the world. Insta-Hiring is more a community-driven activity where we encourage the HR professionals to meet in person and share best practice, both share challenges and best practices, so everybody can learn from each other. So it's a quarterly event, and we do it every quarter in every city. And it's the key driver of this event is that it's a participant-driven learning. So we kind of encourage everybody to share what they've done in their organizations and kind of come together with solutions that have worked for each other, so the rest of them can take it back to their organization. So that's the whole objective of this event. All right. Before we move on, I think it's let me just give you a quick overview on Talview. Talview has existed in the market for the last 6 years, but of late we are trying to change. We're making a paradigm shift in recruitment. The whole objective at Talview is to create a platform that helps you hire the candidates in the fastest possible way. And we've defined a category called Insta-Hiring, that is hiring in an instant, right? And everything that we do and design in Talview is with the objective of bringing down the overall time to hire, because we honestly believe that time to hire impacts the other three metrics that are relevant to talent acquisition. That is your quality of hire, because people are only there for a short time in the market, at least good quality people. It impacts candidate experience, and it also impacts cost to hire. So the focus has predominantly been on the time to hire from a metric standpoint, right? We work across the length and breadth of the industry. We have clients in IT, ITS, banking, insurance, retail, telecom, and mobile. We've had remote presence in Singapore. We worked on very special projects with the OCBC Bank, with the Economic Development Board, and Work for Singapore as well. And this year, the whole objective is to kind of have a full-fledged presence in Singapore and take the conversations forward. We've been We're one of the few companies that have been featured by or have been acknowledged by Josh Bersin himself for using AI in the area of talent acquisition. We also won an award from Microsoft. So there was a recent study in the UK which said that 60% of the companies that claim to have AI haven't actually used AI in their organization. Right? So it's great to be acknowledged by an industry leader like Microsoft for having used AI in the real way possible in the talent acquisition space. And we also happen to be a Microsoft partner. So what's the agenda for today? We start off with breakfast and networking. There's a welcome note by me. Sanjo will briefly talk about hiring at an instant. Then we have the panel discussion, and then we open the discussion to the group here to share their experiences on using artificial intelligence and technology to digitize the whole recruitment process. We, as per the confirmations yesterday, we had about 35 participants. It almost looks like we're about 25 now from 23 different organizations. And we have a very, very eminent panel here. I think I was Vivek, who's here. He was telling me the first person that he met in Singapore was Adrian Tan. I think the first person I met in Singapore was Adrian Tan. So I think he doesn't need any introduction, and he will moderate the discussion today. We have Vandana from Bloomberg. She heads the talent acquisition. She's the regional head of talent acquisition for Bloomberg, and she also manages the company engagement program. We have Emmanuel Croy, who is a co-founder and CEO of GrabJobs. We have Nela Azmi, who's the head of talent acquisition group Asia Pacific at TCS, and we have Sanjo, who's the co-founder and CEO at Talvi. Right? Before we start the next event, a great shout out to the Bloomberg team. Vandana here has played a huge role. This is the second event that we are coordinating with Bloomberg for. And she, in her own way, influences these community activities within the HR fraternity, and very, very grateful to the support that Vandana and Sue here. Thank you so much for helping us with this. It's been a great support. And with this, I would like to open the stage to Sanjay to take us through the hiring in an instant. Thank you, everyone.
Screen is kind of a block. Maybe I'll try and come here. Yeah, I think for everyone, almost every HR leader or HR practitioner I meet, they keep talking about HR tech. There are like so many different platforms, so many companies out there. How do we make sense out of what's happening out there? And uh, like Shashir mentioned, one of our endeavors has been to kind of help the customers or people we meet to make sense out of what's happening out there, and we'll try and do that today as well. But one thing I think which we have been able to do within this space, so we have been in this space for 6 years, but especially in the last 2 years, we've grown 10x in terms of our customer reach, in terms of our revenue, and we've significantly grown. And we believe that there is something unique about what we are doing, and it's our endeavor to share that also with what we are doing and what we have been able to deliver for our customers. So like Shashi mentioned, Bersin by Deloitte last year showcased Talview was in the talent acquisition category, one of the most important influencers. And we also did last year the deployment for the largest number of recruiters from a single organization for digital hiring, which we had 2,000 plus recruiters from a single organization coming on board to use Talview. That's probably the largest deployment of digital hiring ever. And we are also the only HR tech company to win Microsoft's AI for All award. So I think we have been able to grow because especially in the space which we are operating in, there are a lot of applicant tracking systems and assessment platforms. We don't consider, while we touch upon many of those aspects, so we don't consider ourselves as an applicant rank system or or an assessment platform. We believe in solving what we believe is the biggest problem for talent acquisition fraternity today, which is time to hire. But um, in common knowledge, you always equate time to quality. So if I spend more time, I should be able to hire better people. So why should I not spend more time. That's the notion which many of us have. It's kind of an inherent conviction which we have. But if you look at why we do that, it's actually driven by a fear of bad hire, because cost of a bad hire is very high. So if you as humans, we always try to hedge against a bad decision by spending more time. But if you look at the statistics, the best candidates today are available only for 10 days in the market. So if you have a 2-month long hiring process, your ability to hire the best candidates, that's limited by that much. So you are not going to impact your quality of hire by spending more time. The same way, 6 out of 10 job seekers who drop out of the hiring process, they attribute that to a long hiring process. So your candidate experience, again, if you have a long process, that's also getting impacted. And obviously, the more time you spend, especially if you're a high volume recruiter, it's going to drive up your cost. So time to hire is probably one of those North Star metrics which can actually help you take charge of your entire recruiting process. And while this is happening, especially in the West, and I think that's coming to even the APAC region, the way even the white collar workforce is working, that's undergoing a change. So we have more and more remote and freelance workforce entering even the white collar economy. So that means if you're going to hire somebody for 6 months or 9 months, you don't want to spend 2 months in hiring that person. You need to hire them faster. And if we look at how time to hire as a trend has been over the last few years, that's actually increasing. Today, an enterprise takes on an average around 64 days to fill an open position, and you cannot really work with that to get equipped for what's coming. And that's where Talview believes we have a role to play. And today, if you look at, technology has enabled everything at the top of a finger. Whether it's your retail, your mobility, all of that is available in an instant. To use that analogy, but why can't we have the same experience when it comes to talent acquisition? And that's what we call as Insta-Hiring experience, the fastest way to hire. So if you look at the current talent acquisition process, so you have applicant rank systems, but they mostly come at the beginning of the funnel and at the bottom of the funnel, the top and bottom, where at the beginning where you collect all of the resumes, and then finally when you're ready to make an offer, you go back and mark one candidate as selected for offer. But rest of the entire process, whether you're doing assessments or interviews, all of the interactions, all of that happens offline. So there are two challenges. There is very little digitization or automation which is happening in the entire screening and selection process. And you're also capturing very little data because everything is offline. You're not able to derive any insights out of all the data which is getting captured in that entire process. At Talview, we focus on changing this with what we call our 3 pillars or 3 propellers. First one is remote. How do we enable organizations to take the entire process online so that there are no schedule or location constraints? And by virtue of that, we eliminate a lot of friction and help fast track hiring. Second is automation. How do we automate everything which doesn't require a human to be involved? So for example, there are a lot of mundane routine activities within recruiting which really doesn't need a recruiter to spend time, like screening of resume or scheduling of interviews. The recruiter should actually be able to spend time on building a connect with the right candidates and ensuring that they join your organization rather than doing some of these mundane things. And when we are able to automate that, what we also are able to achieve is we make a sequential activity which is very time consuming. A recruiter can only process one candidate after another. If you use a bot for scheduling, the bot can process unlimited number of candidates in parallel. So you are fast tracking the entire process significantly as well. So automating everything which doesn't require a human to be involved, that's a significant part of Insta-Hiring. And reuse. So how do we reuse all the data? So most organizations, you operate in candidate pools which are limited. And many times the same candidate come back, even if you don't hire them the first time. They come back for an interview or an assessment or become part of their process again and again. But when in an ecosystem where everything is happening offline, you will have to make them go through the entire process because you don't have a track of what has happened in the past. So how do we reuse information or reuse processes which have already happened and use that to fast track hiring? So one of the examples which I would use is Deloitte. On an average in a year, they hire around 60,000 people, and for that 60,000 people, they tap into the same 200,000 candidate pool, most of them from a PwC or from a Dell or KPMG or EY. For the first time a candidate applies, even if they are not hired, mostly because of budget or location or timing constraint, the next time there is a similar opening, Deloitte is able to go back and tap into the assessments and the interview recordings and all of that and pull it out and actually let the hiring manager take a call on whether they can fast track the hiring. They can directly take the candidate to the third round or fourth round rather than making them go through the same first round, second round again and again. So essentially, this is the way we re-envisioned talent acquisition with Insta-Hiring, where the entire process happens online. The screening of the entire candidate profile, it happens via a bot. You don't need a human to look at one resume after another. Instead of that, in an instant, the bot can quickly categorize the entire resumes for you. You have the entire process also happening online. So that means you have the remote assessments being conducted. So we use computer vision. There are multiple providers out there who use computer vision technology today to authenticate a person when they're taking an assessment online. And also you have multiple techniques available to ensure that they are not taking external help, because many times companies rely on getting the candidate to your location because they don't want the test score to be compromised. But there are technologies available out there which allows you to remotely conduct authenticated assessments. And when it comes to interviewing itself, there are techniques available. So Talview does something called Talview Behavioral Insights, where based on a video interview which happens on the platform, we use the technique of psycholinguistics to build a behavioral profile of the candidate. So that there are multiple techniques out there which actually not just enable you to conduct an interview online, but also derive a lot more than just the interview transaction, but also derive a lot of insights based on the interview. And one of the other important thing which I already spoke about is you don't lose any data. All of this goes to what we call a qualified warm pool. So the next time there is a requirement, the system can actually recommend the best candidates based on past performance. And rather than asking the candidate to start from step 1, you can actually take them to step 2 or step 3, depending upon how qualified they are. And with every other system which exists out there, with more data, the system becomes more intelligent. And with more candidates, the recommendations also keep improving. So the advantage of using any form of machine learning driven system in your recruitment is also the fact that it learns with every transaction on your platform, and it's able to assist you with decision making with a lot more objective information. So one of the things which we also do is, if you come to a website, you can actually fill a very simple form and get a score for yourself on how much are you Insta-Hiring ready. So we call it the Insta-Hiring readiness. Which part of your process today is probably, by filling that form, you will get a report which will tell you what are those steps within your process which you can impact, which is suitable for your industry and will help you to fast track the entire process and help you drive your North Star metric. And like Shashir mentioned, we have an online platform where you can also come and learn more about it. There are a lot of video classes and material available online about this. So we have a batch starting in, so we do it as 3-month batches. So we have a batch starting on 1st of July. And maybe after this event, we'll also share this information with you. And one of I keep speaking to HR leaders, and I think one of the major challenges which HR face is when you get into a conversation at a board level or with the leadership. Many times there are a lot of questions around, we are not getting the right talent, we are not getting we are not getting people on time, and unlike other functions. So if you look at marketing today has a lot of systems in place which allows them to have data-driven conversations. but HR mostly have to fight based on perceptions, because most of the HR systems are only there from a compliance and tracking standpoint, not really from intelligence or reporting standpoint. So one of the endeavors of Talview, and what we're also trying to promote with an ecosystem of HR technology partners, is also to help HR to have more data-driven decisions, and but be a value function rather than being considered as a cost function, which doesn't have a data-driven strategy. So with that, I think I would invite Adrian to come in and have the panel.
Thanks, everyone. I think now for the most exciting part of the morning, let me just quickly introduce you to the panel. Would you be introducing the rest of the panel? Yeah. So let me just introduce Adrian Tan to you, who's going to be moderating the discussion. Adrian is the regional leader, client solutioning APAC at PeopleStrong, an India-based enterprise HR SaaS platform with over 15 years of HR entrepreneurial experience. He has won 2 HR Vendors of the Year award and is the recipient to SHRI HR Entrepreneur of the Year in 2013. He is the creator of Singapore HR Tech Market Map and is a jobs commentator on Channel News Asia. Very excited to have you on board, Adrian.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next panelist is Vandana Ramchandani. Vandana Ramchandani is the head of talent acquisition and company engagement from Bloomberg in Asia Pacific. Based in Singapore, Vandana oversees talent acquisition and drives the recruitment strategy for 14 countries across the region for all business areas. Vandana has more than 20 years of experience in the financial services industry, having held leadership roles across various departments in Bloomberg, including data management, sales, and customer support. Prior to a role in HR, Vandana was the manager for data operations for Asia Pacific and the Middle East, managing a cross-cultural team of over 250 people. Vandana is on Bloomberg's Diversity and Inclusion Council for Asia Pacific. She is also a member of Bloomberg Singapore Office Committee. She is a frequent speaker at conferences on leadership and talent, inclusion, local leadership, as well as mentoring young women are topics that are very close to your heart. Welcome, Vandana. Thank you for being a part of this. We also have Emmanuel on board. Emmanuel is the co-founder of GrabJobs, a mobile-first jobs platform that aims to revolutionize recruitment in Southeast Asia with proprietary chatbots that automate the recruitment process. He is passionate about technology and innovation and constantly strives to find solutions to real-world problems. Emmanuel graduated from the McGill University with a BSc degree in computer science. He started his career as a software developer in Singapore before making a career switch as a recruitment consultant. Shortly after, he founded Astor Lion, a recruitment firm with Mark Mello. It was his mixed background in technology, recruitment, and entrepreneurship that led him to conceive GrabJobs. Welcome, Emmanuel. And finally, we have Nehla Azmi. Nehla is an experienced talent acquisition group head with a demonstrated history of working in the information technology and services industry. A strong human resources professional skilled in technical recruiting, strategic sourcing, screening, and management. As the head of talent acquisition TCS Asia Pacific, she is responsible for overall strategic and development decision making and implementation of recruitment processes spread across 13 countries in the APAC region. Internal and external stakeholder management continues to be an integral part of her role. Welcome, Nehla. Thank you for being. I leave it to you, Adrian.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Do we have? Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Wonderful morning to everybody. But before we begin, let's give a big round of thanks to Bloomberg for hosting us at this very awesome event. I love your pantry. It's really great. I will. I'll make sure I do that. And also thank you, Telview, for making this happen. So thank you so much for taking time today from your busy schedule to attend today's event, which is centered on time to hire. So as Sanjo has mentioned earlier on what that is all about, and also what Telview has been doing very aggressively in this space, let's also turn to the practitioner, people that are in the fire pit on a day-to-day basis, trying to make things happen, trying to get talent into the organization while battling against all these external forces out there. Now, just to give you a bit of background as well, I've been in recruitment in my previous life, I was in recruitment. I was running an agency for about 12 years, and I have seen how it was done Just after we stopped using fax machine to get resume in, to about just after LinkedIn became very popular. That was quite a interesting transition phase. But if you were to fast forward to today, you would have things have changed a lot. Very interestingly, I just had a friend who have gone through 5 rounds of interview over 5 months at Facebook. Yeah, you would think that a company like that would speed things up, but not really. My cousin just joined an e-cigarette company in Singapore. Very interesting, e-cigarette in Singapore. They can't sell. They can R&D. Basically, they can smoke their own joint, but they can't sell. He went through 7 rounds of interview over 6 months. Yeah, and on the last round, he actually flew to San Francisco for the final round, but still 7 months. I must give it to him. He is very, very patient to go through that 7 months. The most ridiculous one I've ever heard was 9 months with Standard Chartered. From a role in Singapore to the 7th round in KL, where the role became to be based in. And finally, my friend back then just dropped out. It was just too long for him. So there's still many organizations that struggles along this line. And I dare say a lot of time, hiring manager also play a huge part because they are in their own ivory tower, their own silo. Candidates come to me, I just pick and choose. Of course, with all this technology in place, all this kind of different pressure point right now, I do feel that hiring manager have also realized we have to take a huge step forward to try to address all this stuff. So with that, I'd like to understand a bit more on, from the practitioner's point of view, what has been done on this area. Maybe to start off with Nella, I just want to understand from your background in talent acquisition for so long, for any organization here that might be keen to take the first baby step into Insta-Hiring, what kind of enablers should they be looking out for? What kind of things should they be spotting to make sure that the first baby step is a good one?
Thanks, Adrian. To set the context right, I represent TCS. It's a fairly large company. We have a very huge appetite, and we respectfully treat ourselves as leaders in recruitment. The reason why I say that is we recruit about 70,000+ people globally. So there's a lot of experience, there's a lot of thought through that we have had, there's a lot of improvement that we've tried to bring in that level of sustainable recruitment that we do in TCS. Now, talking about very fundamental thing around here, I think the first thing for any organization when we are looking at targeting to improve on time to hire or time for fulfillment is, one, to have enough data, enough visibility to understand where we stand today, which comes with the data. So we need to first have enough data to understand where do we stand today, how much of time is being taken today to where we want to reach. That's what I would say should be a very basic thing to have. Because we do see in our experience, in our own experience in TCS in different countries, we are very strong in some parts of the world in having that access and view to data. In some countries we aren't. Second is to have the right processes, the right systems, and the right structure within the talent acquisition team. Because it a lot depends on the entirety of the ecosystem which complements the process to happen. If you don't have the right structure, whether you have the recruitment happening through the single team or do you layer it between a sourcing, selection, onboarding or whatsoever, that's another thing that we see that helps a lot of time in meeting the desirability on improving the time to hire and fulfillment. 3, which is very, very important because recruitment is not only about how efficient we make our systems, it's a lot dependent on, because we are hiring for others, we are hiring for our stakeholders. So having the commitment, the right communication, commitment with the stakeholders to partner in the recruitment process, to help them improve fulfillment is the third thing that I would say organizations should look at. 4, I would say, would be having agile systems which are flexible enough to adopt the tech solutions that are available in the market today. So for example, if I look at TCS or many companies, they have their own recruitment systems. We have our own recruitment systems, which is completely digitized. But times are changing today. There are a lot of solutions in the market. There are a lot of tech-enabled, AI-enabled solutions, chatbots, so many things available, very exciting things. Can we really do away with our existing systems and quickly pick something from the market? It may be difficult. So having such systems in place, which we have, which should have the agility component in it so that we're able to bring a solution from the market, plug it into our system and work, is another thing that we see helping. Last, I would say is important for any organization to have is system-enabled governance and feedback mechanism. Because unless and until we understand, we govern that all that we have tried to implement towards improving the fulfillment time, we have enough data again coming out of the system and not getting our teams to churn that data. That's another important thing. Taking feedback from stakeholders to gauge whether the stakeholder experience, be that the candidates, be that the customers whom we are servicing, whether we've really been able to impact and bring an improvement in their experience of getting recruited into an organization, that yet plays another important. So these are broad 4 or 5 areas that I would say are enablers and are the basics of fundamentals to look at for any organization which is looking towards improving their time to staff, looking at the time to hire. That's what I would say, Adrian.
I understand. Thank you so much. Thanks for setting the right tone for us. And I understand, Vanda, from the data-driven perspective, that is something you place very close to your heart and something that you place a lot of emphasis in trying to drive the matrix of yours. So could you share a bit about your experience in Bloomberg? And maybe for the benefit of everyone here who may not be so familiar with Bloomberg, help us to understand a bit of what Bloomberg does and then deep dive into how data help you drive certain decisions.
Sure, so that's a very large scope. So bear with me. I'll walk you a little bit through our journey, but let me start by as Adrian said, what Bloomberg does. So Bloomberg, I like to say, we're a financial data and information news provider. I think we almost were probably the first fintech per se, and an intranet, right? So we are really based on communities. A lot of people, a lot of the financial industry trades over us, communicates over our system, right? But we also provide news and data. So that's us, but I think we almost function like a group, a holding company, because we have a financial products division, which is your regular, people join you through an analytics course, they're fresh grads, they go into the sales force, they become market specialists, they go into the sales force. We also have a news and media division. We have a data division, which is very, which has all the data scientists and folks like that. We have a technology engineering division, and of course, we have the support. So when we are going to market, we're really hiring not for one kind of individual. We're almost hiring for 5 different people, right? At the grad level, there can be some overlap. A technologist may want to go into data or the other way around. Some kids don't know whether they want to go into customer service, HR, or sales per se, right? But as you grow up the value chain, it's quite distinct. So at Bloomberg, coming to why data is so close, we have a saying, in God we trust, everybody else bring data. So, that's our fundamental way of doing business. And in my journey, I have a data technology background. So I came into HR 6 years ago, and it's been a fascinating journey for me, because what I walked into was no process, no data, all gut, lots of emotion. And it was, it was I must say, it was a very, very exciting but challenging situation. So for us, time to hire is a baseline, right? That is a given, but it really is the enabler, using your word, Neela, to our KPIs. Our KPIs as a recruiting department or a talent acquisition department are candidate experience. They're no different to our customers. We want to make sure that we have the same high touch, same sort of responsiveness that we would do, because ultimately, if they are grads, they are our brand ambassadors. That's how we get our employer of choice awards, etc. Or if they're at the senior level, and we have, I want to say in Asia, around a 60-40 split, where 60 is experienced hiring. So it's really high touch, right? If I'm hiring hiring the head of media sales for Asia, I better be high touch with that individual. Otherwise, they're not going to engage with me. So candidate experience is critical. Commercializing sourcing is critical because it's the cost of hire. You know, if you look at the triangle of recruitment, right? It's cost of hire, time to hire, and quality. So one of the three, you know, where are you going to emphasize? So for us, time to hire becomes a baseline. You know, we have service level agreements. You've got to meet. If you have a candidate in your queue, within 24 hours, you've got to react. Within 7 days, they should have either gone into third round or whatever, you know. So that's really, but that's commercializing sourcing. So how do you keep your silver medalists alive? And how do you make sure that you've had a silver medalist who's pretty much gone to the last round, you know, of the business, and then for some reason the other candidate was perhaps just had an edge. Really, this candidate wasn't a bad candidate. How do you, next time this job opens, or how do you even keep them engaged? How do you have that coffee in the next 6 months or a year so that you can continue to engage with them, right? So that's commercializing sourcing, bringing down agency costs, making sure you know which agencies work for you because you can look at performance ratings. So that's the third, and quality of hire. And that comes back to, you know, being data-driven, because you can then analyze what sources, what job boards gave you the best quality of hire. Was it, and for us, it's referrals. It's not rocket science. I think that's the industry standard. But 20% last year, 22% in Asia came through employee referrals, and we know that that's our best in terms of quality of hire as a source because of the data. So then you can kind of target that area. Now, how does technology fit in? Very quickly, you know, we've grown exponentially in terms of volume of, and I'll talk from the Asia perspective, by 45% from 2015 to 2018, which is when we launched the Bloomberg experience. So we took a food truck and we did all, you know, we had campus experiences. We were all over the press. It was my second year in the job, and I felt nobody knew who Bloomberg was, because like yourselves, everybody thinks, oh, maybe it's a news or media company. Oh, it's those terminals, right? But what do we do? How can we really join Bloomberg as an employer? But that has led to from 58,000 to 85,000 applications within the last 3 years. There's no way we can keep up with the volume, right? So for us, technology has been video interviewing, self-scheduling for candidates, but only for first round. Once you kind of go to the next level, we become high touch yet again. But again, you know, we're going with we've gone with assessments for, we treat volume hiring and experienced hiring quite differently. You know, it's competency based. We have our HCM, which is Workday, integrate with our own ATS. So it's really about integrating technologies, as Sanjoy said, right, through the Insta-Hiring. We don't have it all covered, but we don't want it all covered, right? We're very clear where we want to target to get the best data. That helps.
Yes, definitely. And talking about technology is definitely something that Emmanuel can share with us a little bit on that. But before that, maybe Emmanuel, before I share with you my question, could you help us understand a bit more about what you do and what GrabJob does?
Sure. So thanks again, everyone, for having us here. So at GrabJobs, we really specialize in the volume hiring at the entry to mid-level job stage. So we don't really focus too much on the mid to senior, because we understand from the industry that the pain point about the time to hire is really in that entry to mid-level stage. So that's when you get really the volume applicants. And so we are more than just a job board. We help companies attract talents, and we help companies automate their recruitment process. And the issue that we've seen with our clients is that they tend to spend 70% of their time doing administrative tasks. So that's going to be reviewing CVs, that's going to be calling applicants, and as a result, they don't have enough time to really spend on face-to-face, let's say, catch-ups with applicants, or really quality time to engage with applicants. And that's where the dropouts happen, because applicants don't feel that they are engaged enough with the company. And how you can solve this issue is by actually reducing the time you spend on screening applicants so that you can have more time to actually spend interviewing applicants face to face. So it's about reversing that 70% that you spent previously on administrative task and focusing that on the face-to-face time with applicants. So in terms of the technology that you can use to cut down your screening time, similar to TalView, we also work with interview chatbots. So that's really a great way to, first of all, engage people instantly and be able to rank them according to who's most relevant for your job requirements. Another great tool that we use to really automate hiring is the self-scheduler, like you mentioned. So instead of spending time to call applicants, try to arrange interview, reschedule interviews, you can have a bot that actually does that for you. And most importantly for us, one of the major issues our clients face is actually the interview no-show rate. So this doesn't happen so much, I would say, in the white-collar type of industry. But when you work with pink-collar or blue-collar industries, companies tend to have a 50 to 70% no-show rate, which is huge. And usually it's because the HR doesn't have the time to send the proper, let's say, reminders to job seekers to actually show up for the interviews. So that's when you can use a bot as well that can send automated reminders to applicants to ensure that they show up. So you automate all this screening process, and then you have more time to engage face-to-face with applicants, and you get less dropout rates.
Thank you. And given that you are in a HR tech space, I believe you keep your finger on the pulse on what's going on in the technological landscape. So would there be any other technology that you have come across, especially recently, that you're very impressed with and you can share with the crowd here that might help them in improving their time to hire matrix?
Sure. So one of the new trends and new technologies out there is predictive analytics. So it's being able to use previous data to assess every new profile that comes into your pipeline. You also have predictive analytics to be able to predict if an employee is on the verge of maybe going out of your company. But one thing that we are currently working on is a tool that actually can predict whether an employee is going to be reliable and is actually going to show up for interview. Data points you can look at is the time to respond. So how quickly does a job seeker actually respond to you when you contact them? It's also in linguistics, like it was mentioned by TalView before, the type of language that users use. There's a lot of data points that can be used in predictive analytics to see whether a candidate will actually be reliable or not. So this is one of the trends that we're looking into right now.
Understand. Sorry, Randa, you wanted to share something?
No, I was just adding to that one. I think we leverage machine learning to do something similar. It's not really predictive per se, but it helps give a rating to the resumes that come in comparison to the past profiles, right? So you get rate. But what I wanted to say was that one of the other concerns or challenges for the HR function recently has been the influence on stakeholders, right? So I'm currently building a competency framework for recruiters, and there's a whole operational excellence piece, but there's a whole data storytelling and business info, which never existed in the past, right? But now you don't want to be, like you said, you want to be a value add function. Without technology, it's very hard to be a value add function because you're so behind and you're always catching up and it doesn't give you the data. Like Emmanuel said, once you have the data, you can actually, most stakeholders, when you go in with data, will listen to you. So I think it's a really important plug to create a culture of recruiting in an organization.
I totally agree, and I need to share this with you guys. So probably about 3 years ago, I was in a panel discussion, and this panelist was actually sharing during her time, which was many decades back, when there's any board meeting, the sales director will come up with sales figures, the CFO will come in with P&L balance sheet, the HR director herself will come in with an attendance sheet. because that is at best what she could come in to do, to mark attendance of everybody. But in today's days and age, because of how easy it is to access data through analytics, through ONA, organizational network analysis, it makes it so much easier to gather the passive and active data, and of course present it to your stakeholders for certain buy-in, and most importantly, to make the right decision as well. So on that notion, maybe I could also spend some time to share with you some of the interesting aspect of technology that I've seen, given my understanding of this space. So in the predictive analytics side, for I think there's a company called Pymetrics doing very well in this space. Although they're focusing very much in graduate hiring, but I still see it as a very good value add. And of course, there's a couple of companies in the O&A space, monitoring the email logs, not the email content, email logs of your organization, to determine the relationship bearing or the relationship level of each of your individual. And of course, with that, infer certain things like whether they will stay, they will go, the kind of influence that they have, are they a natural leader, are they a leader without a title, that kind of stuff, which of course would help you very much in culture change, and also to help you understand what are the right kind of people to hire in. And on that note, I'd like to go back to Nella to better understand from your perspective. You mentioned about the scale that you are hiring across and different geography and all that. I just want to have a better sensing as well. Different countries most likely will come with different baggage, different culture, different expectation. How has your approach changed, or do you have to modify it specifically for certain geography? It'd be great if you could give us an example.
Yeah, we've had to, because rightly said, within APAC, where we are seated today, Southeast Asia, the countries where we exist today, they're so diverse in language, in candidate pool, in the culture that we have there. So we've had to do a lot of customization to our policies. We've had to do a lot of customization, and we are still going through that journey of customizing our systems to respond to the need of how the market is there. If I were to look at maybe in some parts of the world, the candidates are willing to spend a lot of time in putting up their application. They'll be more than happy to feed in data for your 2-page application, where in the rest of the world it isn't happening there. So we've had to customize that. In some countries, the organization itself may be having a very, very strong brand presence. In other countries, it may not be. We have to acknowledge that. So we've had to resort to, if not in all parts of the world, we've had to resort to try technology solutions. We've tried chatbots to engage with candidates who are applying. We've tried to look at the other options that are available in the market, be that which helps us do a profiling of candidates. We've had to look at, and we are still in the process of evaluating some solutions, especially where we can refresh the database that we've built up over a period of time. So we see that there are solution providers which may give an end-to-end solution to recruitment, from the time how quick and how better can you source from many sources using one window, to the time that you're able to onboard somebody. So there's an interview process, which could be video interviews and so many things like that. There could be chatbots in the recruitment in the beginning stage and at onboarding stage. But one thing that we also see that over the period of time, TCS as an organization itself has built a lot of database. So what happens is when you have the applications coming in at any time of the year, it is there. You can process it using your systems and using new solutions in the market, but you can't really refresh them. A resume which came to me 2 years ago or 6 months ago lies in the system as 6 months old resume, which is difficult. So we have our systems where we send periodic reminders through the system to the candidates to refresh their profiles. But that is when we ignite that kind of a communication or an effort towards the candidates to do it, but we're dependent. We do also are today evaluating and looking at some solutions where we see some solutions available wherein if I'm able to put in all my database today, it refreshes their profiles. So throughout our journey, we have had to do a lot of customization. We have been trying, so because we have our own system, we've not adopted an external solution or platform so far. We've tried and plugged in at different stages, depending on where we needed more attention. But this is something that we see to be very exciting at this point of time. We're in a huge database that we have. If we're able to convert that and refresh that, that means that I'm going to be able to use a lot of that data. We know the candidate, we have their footprint on our recruitment system, so we know how they had fared in their previous interview. Today, I have a refreshed profile of them, so we would be in a better position to take the right call on those candidates. So this is how we've gone about across the globe in customizing our systems, in adopting few solutions in the market. Yet we keep exploring and testing the solutions that are there. Maybe not on an end-to-end basis because we had ours, but there are many good solutions to look at today. Yeah.
Right, right. So you mentioned about chatbot as well. It's something that I was quite exposed to over a trip to India 1 year ago. So over at this event, I actually came across there's 120 exhibitors, about 20 of them are actually providing chatbots. And back then I have zero understanding of the India market, but a few weeks later I do, and understand that in India it is very much a screening issue over there, because when you put out one job, you probably get about 3,000 applications. And also, based on my conversation with a lot of companies out there, chatbot appears to be one of the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, in trying to accelerate your time to hire. This is something at my company, People Strong, we also do, but it's more for internal HR purpose. So for any employees to check with the chatbot on certain policy, leave balance, etc., they will do so. But in today's context about recruitment, maybe to start out with, Vanda, do you have any experience, or has Bloomberg attempted any chatbot integration into your recruitment process? And is it something that you'll be looking to explore in the future?
We've had some demos. We haven't really explored it as yet because, again, as I was saying, we have a 40-60. So the volume. So for us, like you said, it would be, or Neil said, it would be very custom focused because, for example, in India, where when you do get a job, post a job, or even in China, you might get tons of applications, but then you have markets like Japan where it's really, really passive. So we wouldn't go with one solution. We haven't gone with chatbots. We're still with video interviewing for volume as well as assessments, which we've gone live with.
Right, okay. Any other solutions that you are currently exploring or interested to be looking to?
I think I think the things that have really made a difference for us, things that have really made a difference for us is as we've gone with the brand, we didn't have much of a brand in Asia, for example. We have a much stronger brand in the US, given Mike was the mayor of New York for 12 years and in London comparatively. But as we've grown our branding footprint, we've actually gone with solutions that allow candidates to engage with us. So we, using barcodes on campuses. So and they have to register with us, get a barcode, go to our Bloomberg experience on campus, scan the barcode, which gives us all of their data, by the way, first year, second year, third year, so we can clearly define when we want to target them, because we're not interested in targeting anybody but the penultimate students for our current roles, right? So we can make our approach to them very, very targeted. And for second years, we can then do, like a Bloomberg Academy where we bring them in. So it's been very focused. I see Sanjoy trying to cut it, so I will now give you the opportunity. Yeah.
Okay,
So.
understand. Okay, so thank you so much for the discussion so far. I understand at this moment we'll be passing the discussion to everyone else. So we'll be opening the floor for any audience member to share, to ask any question to any panelists here. Feel free to do so. I do understand we also have a Slido, but I'm not sure how you're going to share that. It's okay, it's a small group. Yeah. You could just shout out your question if you want to. Any specific questions you have related to Insta-Hiring, time to hire for any of the panelists here, myself? Yes.
Hi, thank you for your sharing. Andrea Mato, I'm using this Facebook. I'm sorry about your friend having that experience.
I take that back. Next time I will check who is in the audience before I share.
But thank you for sharing. My question is in regards to GDPR. We also have lots of in-house built-in technology for all the things that you just mentioned, scheduling and for predictive analytics, and we have artificial intelligence as well. But one of our challenges for what you mentioned before in terms of refreshing profiles, how do you deal with GDPR?
While we have not implemented, we are in the process. Each of the, be that for database refreshing, the partners or the organizations which have introduced these solutions, the first thing that we do is we understand their offerings. And the most time that we have spent so far with any of the partners, including the partner that we are trying to evaluate for this database, is to check where do they stand on the GDPR ability to address the demand of GDPR. We have had several discussions with them and our concerned team in the organization from a security and GDPR perspective to evaluate whether they can. So the solution provider, because it's an external solution that we are trying to look at, we have evaluated and assessed their ability to be compliant in each of the geographies where it is applicable today. So be that GDPR, be that PDP, or whatever nomenclature that it carries today. So that assessment, that provisioning has to be done by the solution provider. The ones that we are evaluating today are pretty much meeting those requirements, because when it is TCS present across the globe, we too have to comply with it. And true, it's a very sensitive aspect. So they have come, the solution provider themselves have to come with the provisioning of how they meet the criteria. The TCS panel itself has evaluated their, they to have qualified on those standards. And now it is for us to take the next steps, take the plunge and test, how well does it go. So there are solution providers in the market who are compliant today. Some of them come, we talk, and it doesn't get through. So more than the offerings, it's happened many times that there are many solution providers who aren't able to meet those criteria. It has happened. They have beautiful solutions, but we aren't able to take it through. But there are some good ones. So that's the good news.
Thank you. How much more time do we have for the questions?
So I think we have 20, 25 minutes more. So the way we typically do this is it need not just be questions, but it could be like thoughts. It's an opportunity for everyone to learn from everyone. So can be questions. It can be any experience which you would like to share. Could be even some technology which you have experienced and it worked or it did not work for you. So it's an open discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Thank you, Sanjay. Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Hi, I'm Vivek. So I have a lot of use cases. I am not an HR practitioner, but like Sashir, Sanjay here, I also come from a technology organization which are trying to implement a lot of predictive analytics. So we also come from India. What I'm trying to say here, two things. One, regarding the data refreshing part, how GDPR compliant can any organization would be is when you are refreshing your data, you already have the contact information of the candidate. I'm just trying to answer this question. And if you start reaching out to those candidates again and take explicit consent from the candidate that, hey, you have applied to us in the past for this particular role, this is the context we already have, would you be willing to share your information again with us as an organization? So that's where an explicit consent with every candidate again is taken by that automated solution provider. That is one way you can take care of the GDPR coverage. The second part of it is that even within the, let's say even the solution provider, if it is offering a service to TCS, it has to be an explicit consent to be shared the data with TCS. A solution provider cannot take the data from the candidate and share it with any third organization. So that's where I think the GDPR part gets covered. And the second, I think the portion which is very extremely exciting nowadays, which when we are speaking to the HR practitioners, is one, how do we understand whether the candidate will join us or not based on the candidate's journey progression. I mean, every candidate wants to move from 0 to 1. If I count a graduate which is coming out of NTU as 0 and Mark Zuckerberg as 1 in terms of technology, so how do we progress from 0 to 1? So if my organization's role, let's say I'm giving a VP technology at Bloomberg, and the kind of candidates who are applying to it are at a director level or maybe an architect level in a fast growing organization, if they are a growth score of 0.5, 0.6, and the role that I have is 0.8, the highest affinity of a candidate to join me is 0.7 to 0.8, rather than a 0.9 candidate who is already on a higher growth track. Why will they join? So I'm saying there are a smaller amount of data which come at a very latent level, which play a huge role in even understanding the affinity of a candidate, whether they'll come for interview or not. So it's not always the external factors. It's the factor whether the candidate really feels this is a job which is going to add value in their next career jump, which comes very handy. I know off the chart, but this is something that I've heard from other people as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Vivek. Thank you for the interesting insight. Moving on, yes?
Hi, I'm Pragati, and I'm part of FedEx, and I've been working with them for almost about 7 years now. Now, very interesting discussion with the panel. Just a couple of things as I was thinking through. One, when it comes to recruitment, right, and especially like organizations like FedEx, where probably we are not mass hiring, and the time to hire is extremely long a lot of times because of the fact that there's a lot of collaboration with the stakeholders, and I heard Nela and Vandana speak about that fact. So how is the technology also enabling recruiters, to really collaborate on their competency, to sell a candidate? Because technology is good, data is good, but then if that data is not leveraged with the competency of the recruiter, because for a recruiter, it's like a sales job. You're selling most of the time to your stakeholder and to your candidate, the job and the company, right? So how is that connection happening? And where are we enabling the competency to sell through data, and how that gets plugged in?
Maybe I can take that. I think Manu touched upon this briefly, but one of the biggest thing and what really bogs down the recruiter in their ability to do this is all the administrative components of their job. Like a lot of recruiters, 70%, 80%, we hear different figures from different companies. They spend in very mundane routine tasks and not actually in terms of engaging with the candidate or building relationship with the candidate. So technology in a way becomes an enabler which helps them to shift their focus from scheduling interviews or looking at every resume which is coming in or giving the candidate an update about their current status, and focus on using all the data on their engagement level to what's happening within, are there any profile changes which is happening within their profile, and help to engage with them more meaningfully. And if you look at, I will draw an analogy from sales. So around 5 years back, sales was in a very similar stage where in sales, the salesperson used to be, the primary role was tracking the progression of a deal from one stage to next. But today, if you look at sales, that's not done by the salesperson. All of that happens automatically. The salesperson is equipped with a lot of insights from what's happening within the market, what's happening with that customer, what's happening in the engagement which you're having, so that they can have more meaningful conversation with the customer. So the focus has moved from tracking and reporting to having meaningful conversations, and that's what technology which we believe will also bring into recruiting, where from all the tracking, reporting, all the administrative aspects, the recruiter is enabled and equipped to have meaningful conversations with the candidate.
Actually, so I think you're spot on, because this is a change. It's a journey for the recruiters. It's a sales organization ultimately in recruiting, right? And it's now enterprise selling. It's not like one-stop shop, which it used to be. So like you said, I think there's a real, there needs to be a focus on upskilling our talent acquisition teams to become talent advisors with all of these insights and consulting skills and telling the story with data. But I wanted to share a live example on where competency. So we've introduced an assessment tool, and what's been fascinating is we've had about, on an average, a 70% alignment. It's a cognitive tool with the traits, because we identified success factors, what makes you successful here, and it really boils down to cognitive traits for us. So industriousness, customer focus, whatever they might be, right? But what we found that while we did the best in the middle, the people who were taking the assessment, the middle portion was being very successful in the interviews because we were running it in parallel, obviously, as proof of concept. The top end was doing okay, but there were about 10% of the bottom candidates passing through. And we realized the commonality between them was their enthusiasm and approachability and willingness to work for the company, which is not really a competence, right? So you can then go back and have a very meaningful conversation because you have technology behind and that's giving you data with the business to say, listen, we've done really well, these are 10%, but what you're really hiring for here is the individual's enthusiasm and willingness and connectivity with you versus a core competency of really being able to do the job, right? And that kind of turns the table and puts it back. And I think that's the information, or that's the ammunition that recruiters haven't had in the past to turn the tables back. This is not our job. This is talent for the organization. If you don't bring in the best talent, you're not going to deliver to your business goals, right? So it's really got to be a partnership in terms of value add.
Thanks.
Thank you. And it's a good, interesting point that you mentioned because it also reminded me about what Emmanuel shared with me. In HR looking for innovation, they could look into what sales and marketing department are doing. Could you take 1 or 2 minutes to address that as well?
Sure. So actually so at GrabJobs, we pride ourselves for developing innovative technology. But how we develop that technology is we actually look at what sales and marketing companies are doing. Because what we feel is that in the recruitment space, we're always a little bit behind the innovations that are happening in sales and marketing. So sales and marketing is all about attracting customers to your brand. As a recruiter, you're doing the same thing. You're attracting potential candidates to your brand. So what kind of tools can you use to do that? In the last 5 years, some of the trends we've seen for sales and marketing, they definitely make usage of online ads, social media ads. So that's definitely something we do now at GrabJobs to attract talent. Is trying to automate all these online ads to bring the candidates on board. The interview chatbots were also something that were pioneered by sales and marketing that we've integrated. And one of the things we're also doing now to engage people is live chat also. So if you want to communicate effectively with your candidates in a quicker response rates, rather than doing email or phone, it's also connecting with them directly over chat. That's one of the things we're doing. And predictive analytics was also pioneered by sales and marketing. So just a little takeaway is that if you're looking to innovate in HR and recruitment, look at what your sales and marketing departments are doing.
And finally, before we move on to the next question, I think we can also learn a bit from companies like Hire.com, GetLinks, which are taking a talent-driven approach, putting the talent on a pedestal. They really know how to market those people. And I think there's a few stuff here and there that we can learn from all these providers as well. Do we have time for one more question?
Yeah.
We good? All right.
I think, maybe we have 5 more minutes.
Okay,
if I'm not
great.
wrong.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bartek. I work for JLL. I'm leading people analytics function there. One of the key questions and worries we have is that talent comes in different shapes and sizes. What do we do and how we protect ourselves implementing these technologies so we don't instill even more bias into the process? So we're really, really concerned about, technologists are super excited about the new technologies and implementation of that, but we're really worried about the impact, whether we replacing one bias with another, the cognitive biases which exist in every company, whether we will just industrialize it and amplify it to crazy extent. How do we do this?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. And I think this reminded me of the story about Amazon. They have this bias-driven AI. Yeah. So any panelists like to address that about your thoughts on this aspect? How do we make sure that the system, the AI behind all this doesn't lead to a new form of prejudice and actually drives down the diversity that we are trying to get into?
I can probably take that. Yeah. So, uh, essentially, a lot of that is on the solution provider. So, the way in which and there are established way in which you can isolate biases and remove them from the entire predictive mechanism. But most solution providers today out there in the market, they don't really do that. So that's one area where you need to really evaluate, especially when it comes to decision making based on, let's say, resume screening is one use case where uh, some of these biases could come in. And a lot of it is also in terms of what kind of data are you looking at to form your predictive decision or form your predictive engines. So what we have seen is generally performance-driven predictive engines, engines which tap into post-onboarding performance of candidates tend to be a lot more with lesser bias, subject to again the data which is coming in. So if you, but most predictive at the end of the day, we are also trying to optimize for performance. So and the organization measures performance in a particular way. So if you're able to depend on that compared to data which is coming from steps which are in between, we have seen that that works for customers. But still a journey. I don't think like any other new technology or new process which you're trying to introduce. I don't think we have kind of completely solved for that. There's still a journey, and you need to evaluate the solution provider, evaluate the kind of data which is going in, and try and make it as objective as possible. But there are like a lot of now established methods of isolating bias and removing it from the entire process.
I would also like to suggest that you check out this book called The Robots Are Coming by Andres Oppenheimer. I just started this book about halfway through. It goes beyond what you just discussed about the long run, the repercussion of how robots, AI will affect employment at large, but very interesting read to better contextualize how it might affect us right now. Yes, please.
Thank you. I think I tend to agree with Batik's point. My name is Elvin, and I consult and I teach with NTU. Primarily, I think it's important these days to strike a fair balance between the high touch and the high tech of selection and recruitment. While I oversee talent acquisition as under the umbrella portfolio of talent management, there's a big portion about performance-driven assessments like competency development and capability enhancement, which are important elements in the selection process, even as we begin with the journey from looking at the talents that we are bringing in to making sure that the talents succeed with the organization. And that is not something which the high-tech part would be able to capture in its entirety unless it is well balanced with the high-touch aspect, particularly if the role is critical, it's a critical talent, and it moves up with the succession plan of leadership. The blueprint is important to determine how the leaders bring forward the organization and achieve the bottom line results, which are the dollars and cents, the economic-driven values. So I think that is a very important point of consideration. And I think the other thing which I heard panelists mention also in passing earlier is that how do we ensure predictive analytics, robotics and all that? I like the book that Adrian has suggested, but I also like to share that it might be good for us to read the book by E.M. Forster that talks about the machine stops. Which means, a point of time where over-reliance of technology, and when the machine stops, you just can't do anything anymore. And I like to caution my postgraduate students also. I say, well, because they are very experienced corporate executives, and I said, it's important to rely on technology, but just don't over-rely on technology, because a day will come where the machine stops. Thank you.
Great. I think maybe one last round of comments here.
This question was actually for Vandana, considering that you also handle the D&I mandate. The adoption of new technologies into the recruitment process and more of analytics, has it directly helped you in your diversity mandate? Because it's supposed to remove a lot of unconscious bias and
It
complete
has
the process.
actually
So I wanted to understand the Bloomberg output.
Thank you. That actually it has tremendously. So while technology can be a blocker, it can also be an enabler. I think it's like you said, Alvin, how it's the balanced approach between where you leverage technology and where you leverage high touch. And obviously, we at Bloomberg strongly feel that you cannot replace the recruitment team. And that's one of the biggest reasons we wouldn't do an RPO. Even our shared services is in-house. Everything is in-house. Our self-schedule, I mean, there is an individual behind it all, no matter what. So if technology breaks, we can come in immediately. There is no downtime per se, right? Of course, there's limited downtime. But I think it's really helped us drive diverse slates because again, you can go back with the data to the business. So we have a mandate that every business round, first round has to have a diverse slate. Every interviewer round has to have diverse slates. So it's not the interviewee, but the interviewers, because we want to come across as a diverse company. And you can talk as much as you like on your website, but when candidates come in the door and they don't see a diverse workforce, they don't see a diverse interviewing panel, it all falls down, right? So it's extremely important for us to have, so we've actually gone with a metric-driven approach towards diversity. Diverse slates, diverse interviewer panels, where does the diversity fall in the recruiting funnel? And we've also instigated that if you are going with a non-diverse candidate for, and it could be gender, it could be many other things, it could be local leadership, etc. To Alvin's point, then the next level manager will need to get approval and you will need to explain the funnel. So you'll have to give a business justification on, okay, so the funnel reached this level, this is what happened. We did engage even agencies. That's the one time that we would engage agencies with a diversity agenda. Otherwise, we'd go with our own sourcing team. So yeah, totally enables us with the data.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
Sanjay, you'd like to wrap it up?
Yeah, so thank you for the wonderful discussion. Thank you for all of you to, I think it's great for all of us to come together and discuss about many of these things. Hopefully there are some points or some notes for each of us to take back to our daily life and maybe implement it, maybe use that to evaluate how we adopt technology within our organization. And yeah, I think thanks a lot for coming today and look forward to continuing these discussions online and subsequently as we meet again, as and when we get an opportunity. Thank you.